Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Today, Donald Trump waved the white flag, acknowledging, in so many words, that he could not override a Supreme Court ruling barring his administration from adding a citizenship question to the census under a bogus pretext.
It's deeply regrettable, but it will not stop us from collecting the needed information, and I think even in greater detail and more accurately.
In admitting defeat, Trump ordered government agencies to share existing data that would allow the administration to effectively build a citizenship database. And that could have some very serious implications that we'll discuss shortly. But on the key issue, he lost. And he lost on one of the most consequential questions there is. The census, done every 10 years, ordered by the Constitution, sets the groundwork for nearly everything the government does. It's used to determine how many seats each state has in the House, how the nation allocates billions upon billions of dollars in federal revenue, not to mention electoral college votes and the makeup of state legislatures, decisions about where to build infrastructure, a host of other questions. To do that, the government needs an accurate head count of every person in the United States. Adding a citizenship question to the census would undermine that goal because it would have discouraged undocumented immigrants and their families, among others, from participating. And that would have hurt states and districts that are more diverse and tend to be the most often represented by Democrats. Of course, the Trump administration didn't admit that was the point. They argued absurdly. What they wanted to do to add the question was in an effort to better enforce parts of the Voting Rights Act, which the Trump administration has been hostile to from the start. In March, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross went before Congress and he just flat out lied in an effort to push that bogus story. But Ross's lies were eventually exposed, and court after court ruled against the administration until the citizenship question ended up before the Supreme Court. And that's when something even wilder happened. The estranged daughter of a deceased Republican operative discovered files on his hard drive that completely undermined the administration's position. The hard drive showed the operative helped come up with a pretext for adding that citizenship question, and that he believed that drawing political maps that exclude non-citizens would, quote, would be advantage to Republicans and non-Hispanic whites. In other words, we could tip the scales to white people and Republicans. Now, that may have been the tipping point. In a 5-4 decision, Chief Justice John Roberts sided with the court's liberal wing, ruling the administration could not add the question based on those bogus pretexts. The administration then began printing the census forms, even as Trump raged and hemmed and hawed and tried to find some other way around the Supreme Court. But today, crucially, he didn't. But here's the thing. Trump may have lost in the substance, but his anti-immigrant rhetoric will continue to have a chilling effect. That rhetoric has been the defining aspect of Trumpism from day one. From the start, he has worked to scapegoat, dehumanize, and vilify immigrants, and frankly, to just scare the hell out of them. We're learning now that on Sunday, the administration plans, or says it plans, to conduct mass immigration raids on at least 2,000 families across the United States. You might think the administration would want to keep such raids quiet to maintain an element of surprise, but the raids themselves aren't entirely the point. The point is to make people feel scared and alienated and like strangers in the place they live, and to make the people who hate immigrants and love Donald Trump feel good. Joining me now, Thomas Saenz, President and General Counsel of the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Education Fund, which sued the Trump administration over the citizenship question. It was one of 2 suits. This one was the one based in Maryland. Thomas, first, your reaction to the president's decision today?
Well, it's a little late. He's 10 days behind his lawyers, who told us at the beginning of the month that they would move forward with Census 2020 without a citizenship question, but it's certainly a victory if it sticks. We want to make sure that this is a final decision that cannot be reversed at any point in the future. But if it is a final decision and we can get a court order that prevents it from being reversed, it's a great victory.
What is the if? I hear some hesitancy in your voice.
Well, as you know, we've gone through 10 days of a purported reversal. We want to make sure that this is a decision that won't be revisited prior to the census next year, and we'll get it put in a court order that will prevent them from reversing the decision at any point.
What did it say to you? It was interesting to me. So there's been this pretext all along that was cooked up, and we all know that, right? That the Jeff Sessions Department of Justice was so intent on enforcing the Voting Rights Act, they had to ask this question. That was preposterous. It was cooked up by Wilbur Ross and Steve Bannon and Chris Kobach and Hoffeller and all those folks. The president today basically came out. He came right out and said, why he wants this information. I want to play for you and get your reaction to hearing him be explicit about what they're after. Take a listen.
Number one, you need it for Congress. You need it for Congress, for districting. You need it for appropriations. Where are the funds going? How many people are there? Are they citizens? Are they not citizens? You need it for many reasons.
Sorry, that was Friday. But he's being very clear there that they want to orient representation and everything around citizens.
That's right. They want to change the rules. We've known from at least the 14th Amendment that every person is to be counted and included in apportioning House of Representatives seats among the states. They appear to want to revisit that. And we have, throughout our history, counted the total population, recognizing that everyone is a constituent in drawing the districts that are represented by Congress members, state legislators, and others all around the country. So, yes, they've been more and more explicit about seeking to change the rules, just as they know the existing rules will play out against them.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Donald Trump knows that he has alienated the Latino community. He further knows that the Latino community is growing quickly in important states across the country, and anything he can do to diminish the count and the influence of the Latino community, he seems to have concluded would benefit him politically, personally, and also those who follow him.
But it's bigger than Donald Trump, isn't it? I mean, Hoffeller, the individual who died and whose daughter found the hard drives, he's a member of the GOP establishment in good standing. He cooked up the maps that were struck down by courts in North Carolina. Do you see this as part of a broader project?
Yes, I think it's quite clear that there are folks on the right who, for many, many years, indeed, they've pursued court cases all the way to the Supreme Court, have been interested in changing the rules about drawing districts because they recognize that the demographics are not in their favor, particularly because the Republican Party, regrettably, has alienated the Latino community, largely because of a near unanimous anti-immigrant nativist streak in their policymaking, and that is dangerous over the long term. I'm in California, and this happened in California a quarter century ago when Pete Wilson's championing of an anti-immigrant proposition on the ballot gained him re-election, but really catalyzed a change in the politics of this state. So it went from being a purple state to a very solidly blue state, largely because the Republican Party in California had alienated those groups that were growing in size, Latinos, Asian Americans, and those who support them.
Final question. This was remarkable litigation in a lot of ways, both the suit in Maryland and New York. What was your big lesson from the fact that in some ways the levee held here? I mean, I was a little scared we were going to get our Andrew Jackson moment, frankly, that some kind of outright facial disobeying of a Supreme Court order. What's your lesson about what happened here?
Well, I think it's a lesson about the strength of the courts and how important they are, which is further an indication of why we should all be concerned about unqualified folks with evident biases being appointed by Donald Trump to lifetime appointments on the federal courts. The federal courts really are our last bulwark of defending the Constitution against very real threats like the one you've described. So in this case, the courts played their role, and that's something we should all be proud of, but also be vigilant about maintaining.
All right, Thomas Saenz, thank you for making. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.